All right, today we're going to be talking about adding and subtracting rational numbers. So just a refresher from the last class, a rational number is one that can be written as a fraction. For our purposes this year, we are focusing on positive and negative decimals and fractions. And just like with multiplication and division, all of the things you know about decimals and all of the things you know about fractions are still true as far as adding and subtracting goes. And then you can remember the scoreboard as a way of adding and subtracting the positives and negatives, just like we did with integers. So just to recap, if the signs are the same, this is, of course, again, when you're adding and subtracting, when the signs are the same, you're going to add those numbers together and keep the sign. So if they're both positives, of course, we add them together and keep it positive like we've always done. But now we know if they're both negative, we can also add those together and keep the sign. If the signs are different, however, we're going to subtract them, like find their difference. And then to determine if your answer is positive or negative, you're going to use the sign from the number that has the greatest absolute value. The greatest absolute value is just another way of saying which team won or who had the most points, positives or negatives. So just a reminder, I know you guys know this, but just a reminder that when you are working with fractions, you need common denominators, and when you're working with decimals, you need to line up the decimals, unlike multiplying and dividing. All right, let's get to some examples. So over on the left, we have fractions. Remember that when we add or subtract fractions, my advice is to first take mixed numbers and change them to improper. So we'll take 4.5 and make it 9 halves. Then we need common denominators. We'll use 8. This one's already eighths. For this one, I would multiply by 4. So 9 times 4 is 36. And 2 times 4 is 8. Okay, recall that when we add or subtract fractions, we keep the denominator the same. So what we're really doing is deciding what to do with this -5 and 36. And really, I should have included that sign. So if we were doing a scoreboard, we would have 36 positives and 5 negatives. And the positive team would win by 31. Or according to our tips at the top of this page, since we have one positive and one negative, we'd subtract them. 36 minus 5 is 31. My answer would be positive because the higher absolute value is the 36. Or the thing I have most of is positives, or the positive team won. Those are all ways to determine that your answer is positive. Then, of course, if I can simplify, I will. But in this case, there's no number that goes into 31 and 8 evenly other than 1. And as you know, I am fine with improper fractions as our answer. If you'd like to change it to a mixed number, you certainly can. Let's try the next example. We need common denominators. So we have, let's use 24. To get 24, we'll have to multiply this -5/6 by 4/4. So that's going to give me -20. So you might be thinking, wait a minute, that negative right there, I don't think that's a -5. I think that's a subtraction sign. Remember that negatives, subtracting, opposites, minus, those are all the same thing. That subtraction sign or that negative sign goes with the fraction 5/6. And I always put it in the numerator. Sometimes you'll see it even with the fraction bar, but I like to put it in the numerator just to keep everything straight. All right, so if I were doing a scoreboard for this problem, let me just erase this and make myself some room. If I were doing a scoreboard for this problem, I don't have any positive numbers. I have a -23 and a -20. So the negative team is going to win by 43 points. and keep the denominator the same. Up on top, we said if the signs are the same to add them. 23 plus 20 is 43, and then keep the sign, so we're going to keep it negative. There is nothing that goes into 43 and 24 evenly to make it smaller, so this is my final answer. If you would like to make it a mixed number, you can. All right, I think decimals are a little easier than fractions, so let's go look at the decimals. For this first example, I'm going to find, I have a negative and I have a positive, so I'm going to find their difference. I'm going to subtract them, and I'm going to use the sign of the one I have the most of. I have more negatives than positives, so my answer is going to be negative. Let me find their difference. Because I have a positive and a negative, I want to subtract them. I cannot take 8 away from 0. I need to borrow. So I get 2.22, and my answer is negative because I have more negatives than positives. In the next example, I am doing another decimal problem. I have two numbers that are negatives. I have negative 2.3 and negative 0.08, same numbers as the problem above, except this is subtraction instead of adding, so that subtraction or that negative goes with the 0.08. Since the signs are the same, I want to add them this time because they're all negatives. On a scoreboard, the negative team would have all the points. And since they're the same sign, we're going to add them and keep that same sign. So it's negative 2.38. That's all. Thanks for watching.